Previously on Unfinished Business.
We're moving on from the 2018 Queensland Open 1500 final to the 2018 Australian Athletics Championships and Commonwealth Games trials.
But over the shorter distance, but obviously, you know what? He wants to focus on that 5,000 metres at the champs at the Commonwealth Games.
FOGDOG took you on his journey to the 2018 Australian Open Nationals and Commonwealth Games trials, where he competed in the 1500 metres. After taking his 1500 metre PB down from 354 to 351 at the Commonwealth Games trials, FOGDOG took you on his journey back to Brisbane for the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 metre final. After going out hard and doing a lot of the work during the race to try and break the 348 World Junior Qualifier, FOGDOG ended up finishing second in 349.84.
When I finished that race, I thought that was it. I thought that was my final chance to run the World Junior Qualifier, and it wasn't until about a week later that I realised there was another chance for me to run the World Junior Qualifier, and so I booked a flight to Melbourne and I registered to race in my first Vic Milers Club meet, where I got into the top 1500 race, which turned out to be one of the most competitive races in the history of Vic Milers Club. Welcome back to episode 4 of Unfinished Business. For those of you who saw the preview for episode 4 of Unfinished Business on last week's episode, you'll have seen that we're moving on from the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final to the final race of the 2018 Vic Milers Club season, where I got into the top 1500 race and I knew it was going to be my final chance to achieve that 348 1500 World Junior Qualifier. So for those of you who have followed along on the journey so far, and more specifically for those of you who saw last week's episode, you'll have seen that during the 2018 season, I took my 1500 PB down from 354.25 to 351 at the Commonwealth Games trials. And then at the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final, I ran 349.84 to place second. So I'd come a long way, but I was just shy still of that World Junior Qualifier, which was 348.00. And I was running out of time as Nationals was in mid-March and I needed to have the qualifier by the end of Nationals. Technically, it would have been possible to run that World Junior Qualifier at the National Championships, but a lot of the time when people are trying to get a medal or make a team, they're much more focused on where they finish in the race instead of focusing on running fast. So I definitely wanted to have that World Junior Qualifier before going into Nationals. A perfect example of this happening is the 2016 Rio Olympic 1500 final that was won in 350 by Matt Centrowitz. And so if on that day Matt Centrowitz was trying to run the World Junior Qualifier, not that he would be in the Olympic final, but if he was trying to and he ran 350, he wouldn't have made the team. So because everyone was focused on trying to win that race or get a medal or just try and finish as far up the field as they possibly could, it went really slow. No one wanted to take the lead, and so pretty much Matt Centrowitz led the whole thing from start to finish and won it in 350, which for athletes of their standard was ridiculously slow, and usually the Olympics would be won in a much faster time than that. Anyway, so as I mentioned in last week's episode, when I finished the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final, I thought I was going to have to go into Nationals without a World Junior Qualifier. Nationals was being held in mid-March and the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final was in late February. I think it was about 3 weeks until Nationals. I wasn't planning on racing again, And so pretty much I decided I was going to have to try and run the World Junior Qualifier at Nationals until I spoke to my mum and dad and realised that I actually had another chance to run the qualifier at the final race of the 2018 Vic Milers Club season. And so me and my dad booked a flight to Melbourne and I got into the top 1500 race, which, as I mentioned in last week's episode, turned out to be one of the most competitive races in the history of the Vic Milers Club. Alright, so this was all organised pretty last minute. As I mentioned, when I finished that 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final, I had no idea what time I'd run and no intentions of racing again until Nationals. But when I realised I'd come that close to the World Junior Qualifier, and me and my parents realised there was a chance to run another race at Vic Milers Club in Melbourne, we thought the opportunity was too good to pass it up. And so we booked flights and accommodation on March the 3rd, and the race, the Vic Milers Club final meet of the season, was being held on March the 8th. So I just scraped in time, I entered the race and got into the top 1500, which I absolutely knew for sure was going to be my final chance to run the World Junior Qualifier before Nationals. Okay, so with this race, Vic Milers Club was always notorious for setting up fast races and getting people really fast PBs. And so when the heat sheets came out, I checked it and saw that I was completely out of my depth. I really didn't know what to expect, but I'd heard a rumour that Joel Tobin White, who is associated with the Melbourne Track Club squad, had asked to be paced for around about 3:45. And so even though that was kind of quite out of my depth, I knew that the opportunity was perfect for me to try and dip under that 3:48 World Junior Qualifier. Going into the race, the field was huge and there were quite a few people in there who had dipped under 3:50 for the 1500. Obviously, I was one of them, but I was at the slower end, and I think Jordan Tyler was the favourite at the time going into that race. He had a PB of 3:46.9, and so I knew that there were definitely going to be some fast guys in there, and I could just kind of sit in, try and hang on, get a PB, and break that World Junior Qualifier. Also, at the time, I'd seen on Instagram while I was still at home before flying down to Melbourne, the 2016 Rio Olympic 1500 champion Matt Centrowitz was in Melbourne training and doing a bit of racing, I believe. And so when I arrived in Melbourne and turned up at the track to run in the Vic Milers Club top 1500 race, Matt Centrowitz was actually there that night watching, and before the race he came along and shook all of our hands before we got started. So the atmosphere was great. There were quite a few people watching on that night. My dad was there, obviously Matt Centrowitz was there, and the race was being paced. They confirmed it on the start line that the pace were going to try and take us through in 60 seconds per lap. And so I knew that this was definitely a great chance and a perfect opportunity for me to run the World Junior Qualifier on that night. So without further ado, this is the final race of the 2018 Vic Milers Club season. I'm not going to commentate on this race and I'm going to show the full thing. I'm wearing orange spikes and my white singlet, and at the very start of the race in the back straight, I'm quite far towards the back of the pack, but then in the first bend, I move up, and so enjoy it. This is my final chance to run the World Junior Qualifier, and it was the perfect night for the race.
So away now, conditions perfect. There's a few in this field that are looking for big times. There's one looking for a World Junior Qualifier, and Marantali is the first pacemaker. Toby O'Brien sitting right behind him, pacemaker number 2. And it looks like, just as happened in the Vic Champs, it might be Jack Holden has found himself thinking, what the hell am I doing leading this field? So Holden's in next position. Try and get a fix on times as they come through. They'll be looking to go through around 60 seconds, possibly 61. So the bulk of the field in around 58, 59, so they're on target, sub 345. So the field is spread beautifully. Roger's in there. record holder. The two pacemakers maybe just getting a little bit too much of a gap there, might have to pull themselves back in a bit. So O'Brien leads it, pacing ahead of pacemaker number 2, Marantali. So Jordan Tyler's in the 3rd position there, leading the race. Also up there, looks like it is Queenslander Fog. So right on 2 minutes, the pacemakers get them to the 800. They're on 3:45 pace. So down to one pacemaker now, and it's Marantali. He's just stepping off the track. That leads Jordan Tyler from Tasmania. Best of 3:46.9. So hopefully on PB pace as they come through to get one to go. So it's still bunched. Anyone can take this one out. Let's see if we can get some big PBs here tonight. Jack Holden want to run. Roger's going to the outside. Buckingham, Potter, Tobin White, Cashin, Guinea's up there, Fogg's up there. Beisch is still there as well. So they're battling through here. Coleman's got a bit of work to do. So 3:02 through the 1200. We're still on sub 350, but not by much. It's got to be a kick down here. So Tyler's leading it. Beisch has made a big run there. So big move there from Ed Beisch at 200 out. Looks like Fogg's moved in. He's one of the guys going for the World Junior Qualifier, so Fogg's putting himself in position there. Potter starting to move back through the field. I think it is the Doncaster runner also up there. And that's Tobin White. So as they stretch, it looks like Fogg's going to move into the lead potentially here. So Fogg's got the lead here. Tobin White coming strong. 4:47. It looks like Fogg's got his qualifier. Great run there. Adam Fogg from Queensland, 2-second PB. The trip from Queensland's been made well and truly worth it. So 3:47 as he crossed the line. We'll wait for the official timing. Fantastic pacing, fantastic racing to round out this evening here and round out this series for the Victorian Milers Club. So have we seen another performance that's going to take someone to Finland?
Alright, so obviously that race probably couldn't have gone any better at all. I got the World Junior Qualifier and got the win. Before the race, I knew I was definitely capable of running that World Junior Qualifier because I'd come so close to it in previous races, but I definitely didn't expect to get the win there, so that was an added bonus on the night. I'd also say that even though I have now run more than 7 seconds quicker than I ran on that night, for the 1500, this race would still be up there with my best races of all time. It was a great night. It was a really cool meet. My dad was there, Matt Centrowitz was there. I had people back home watching on the live stream, and I went out there, got the job done, got the World Junior Qualifier and got the win. So it really couldn't have gone any better. I ended up running 3:47.75 on that night, which was a PB by just over 2 seconds for me, and Joel Tobin White came second in 3:47.9. So in the end, only the top 2 runners in that race dipped under 3:48. Obviously, Joel Tobin White is a bit older, so it didn't count as a World Junior Qualifier for him. But I think if I had have known before the race that only 2 people would go under 3:48 and break that World Junior Qualifier, I would have expected it not to have been me, just because I really felt quite out of my depth and I didn't expect to finish that far up the field in that race. Not only was my 347.75 a World Junior Qualifier, but it was also the second fastest of the World Junior Qualifiers going into Nationals. So going into Nationals, Jackson Sharp from Sydney had the fastest World Junior Qualifier. He'd run 346.88. Then it was me at 347.75, followed by Callum Davies, who beat me in the 2018 Queensland Under-20 1500 final. He'd run 347.89, and then no one else going into Nationals had run a World Junior Qualifier. So I knew that if I could run well at Nationals and get the job done, then making that World Junior team to travel to Finland later in the year was definitely a possibility for me. Also, I gained a bit of extra confidence going into Nationals, as I knew that running in Melbourne at the Vic Milers Club meet and getting the win there had gone so well on the night. As I mentioned, I knew I was capable of running the World Junior qualifying time, but on the night I really didn't know what to expect, as I was quite out of my depth. But as the race got going, I found myself in a fairly decent position fairly early on, and then we got through the lap. I was still in quite a good position. I think we went through in just under 60, and I was feeling good. I was running well until about 800 in. We went through 800 in around 2 minutes flat, and I was beginning to feel quite tired. I actually got overtaken, as you probably saw, by quite a lot of people, and I think I went through the bell lap in 8th or maybe even 9th place, and the clock was on 2:49 when I went through the bell, so I knew that I was going to have to close really hard if I wanted to break that 3:48 World Junior Qualifier. I was obviously quite a long way back through the field at that point, but going around the bend, I got into a decent spot. Ed Baisha, who was also a junior athlete at the time, came past me. He went really hard down the back straight, and it actually opened up perfectly for me. I was able to get myself up into 3rd place, and then coming around the bend and into the home straight, I don't know how, but suddenly found myself in the lead, and obviously Joel Tobin White was chasing me down the home straight, but I did enough to hang on for the win, and I got that World Junior Qualifier on the night.
Great run there. Adam Fogg from Queensland, 2-second PB. The trip from Queensland's been made well and truly worth it.
Next week on a FOGDOG exclusive. FOGDOG heads to Sydney for the 2018 Australian Junior Athletics Championships. Fresh off his win at the Vic Milers Club meet in Melbourne, FOGDOG is hoping to make the most of the opportunity to qualify for the Australian team for the World Junior Athletics Championships in Finland.
It is Fogg out in front and Davies on the outside.
See all of this and more next Thursday, June 4, 7 p.m. Central Time.
MJ Jansen Van Rensburg now.
Only on the FOGDOG exclusive.